All right. This is the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters Program session. Very excited to talk a little more about this really cool program and let you know how our team can help. All right. So, getting started, we've already done our icebreaker. We're going to talk a little bit about what are fellowships in general. Most people tend to have kind of a vague definition, but we'll talk about what we mean when we say fellowships here. Talk about the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters Program. I'll alternately refer to it as Erasmus Mundus and EMJM. Both are the same program. What makes a good applicant? And we actually have some written advice from applicants who have received the award. We actually have a couple of alumni who are going to be coming, or not coming, but virtually coming to campus on the 21st. At 3 o'clock virtually, and I can share that in my wrap-up email after our meeting. But we have Jordan Hammond and Amanda Tregdy who will share their experiences on the Erasmus Mundus program, and you can come to that event to ask them questions, hear about their experiences, and make some good connections. So this will be a preview of that. So that'll be the student voices for the next time. And then what's next? How do you get involved? How do you apply for this fellowship opportunity? And as we go through this, feel free to throw questions in the chat, unmute yourself, ask your questions as we go through our presentation today. So, already did our icebreaker, got a lot of cool places to go. So, the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters Program. So, what is it? So, the Erasmus Mundus program is a 1 to 2 year funded master's program at 3 or more European universities. So the really cool thing about Erasmus Mundus is it is this kind of cross-border international degree that's offered jointly by a couple of different universities. Either they will offer like 2 masters, one from each university that you are attending, or it'll be a master's degree from like a consortium of the universities. And they include universities in Europe, obviously, but there are also some that have international partnerships as well. So there is a possibility to do some of your coursework in Japan or in like, I think there's one that goes to Ghana. Like there are a couple that are even more international than just staying in the European Union. This is funded by the European Union, and it's intended to help students from all different countries come and get more education in Europe and share the wonderful skills experiences that they bring to the program with the European cohorts. So these programs will typically include periods of study, a little bit of research, sometimes a traineeship or an internship, and usually a master's thesis preparation and defense. And they usually last 2 years, with a few exceptions being 1-year programs. They're all really interdisciplinary, which I think is probably the coolest part of this program. And they just have some amazing topics. That's why it's one of my favorites to talk about. Topics include space medicine. So if you ever thought about, oh, how do humans respond to space and extreme environments? Well, you can get a master's in that, funded through Erasmus Mundus. Wine tourism and sustainability, that's one of my favorites. What I would do if I quit tomorrow, which I hopefully will not. Public health and crisis settings, for those public health folks. They have quite a few different public health degrees with some specific focuses like crisis settings, like space medicine, other ones that are a little bit more general. And then, of course, a lot of flavors of environmental policy, management, conservation, all sorts of really great stuff, which I think we have a big cohort of environmental science folks here and a big cohort of like public health STEM. So we'll focus mostly on those 2 areas, but like they have so many different programs: animation, children's literature, AI and data. So all sorts of things. So what are the application requirements to take advantage of this program? So Erasmus Mundus, unlike some other programs, if anyone's heard of Fulbright, for this one, you apply for the program and the funding together. So there'll be one application for admission to the program and consideration for the Erasmus Mundus funding. So there will be a potential scenario where you get into the program, but you don't receive the funding. A lot of times, masters in Europe master's degrees in Europe tend to be a little bit more cost effective anyways. So you may find that even if you don't receive Erasmus Mundus program funding, there may be other sources of funding that you can get through the university, through FAFSA is supported at some of these universities, or it might just be cheaper to go to Europe and get your master's as opposed to doing something domestic. So there is that possibility, but there's also the possibility that you get the program acceptance and this additional funding opportunity, which includes your tuition and fees covered, so you don't pay tuition and fees for the course, also a cost of living stipend, and they'll help you out with your visa for the program. So really good if you can get the Erasmus Mundus funding, but even if you don't get the funding, you can still go on these amazing programs. So the deadlines vary depending on the program. Each individual program has its own deadline. I'll show you in a moment where you can find the Erasmus Mundus course catalog. They have upwards of 100 different programs, so lots of different opportunities, and they all have their individual requirements. Some of them may require that you've majored in a specific field as an undergrad. A lot of European universities like to see that continuity of study, and they may have restrictions in terms of what you can study with certain undergraduate degrees. So just know that going in, something to look out for. Some of them do require test scores, GMAT, GRE equivalents. A lot of them will talk about like language proficiency, one for English, because you are attending a US institution taught in English. A lot of times you won't need to provide evidence of that, but there are some, particularly for like Spanish and French, speaking programs that will want to see that you've had some language proficiency. But by no means does it mean that you can't participate in Erasmus Mundus if you don't speak a European language, but it's always a plus. And some programs do have that requirement. So it's definitely good to read through and understand the requirements for each program individually. I will say there that the Erasmus Mundus search catalog is a little weird. If you try to use the search filters, they can sometimes like filter out too much. So I would just recommend, maybe not tonight, but get yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and just like go through the entire catalog just to see what's out there. Because again, these are very interdisciplinary programs. These are programs that maybe don't fit neatly into any one category. So it's really nice to go through and just see what the options are. So I'll show you that catalog in a little bit. But first off, just want to talk about fellowships in general, what makes a good fellowships applicant. So with that, basically, when we're thinking about fellowships applicants, we want to think about excellence writ large. Different things will make you successful for different kinds of programs. But generally, especially for international awards, they are looking for a genuine interest in others' cultures, languages, ways of being, countries, that having that genuine interest in how things are done in other places, definitely almost a requirement, I would say, for international awards. Solid academics, particularly in your area of focus. Again, all of these have different requirements. Some of them may have GPA requirements, but often fellowships will not have specific numbers attached to what they're looking for academic performance, but really they're looking for in your area of study. Are you doing well in your courses? Are you consistently getting good grades in that? Have you been successful in your area of study? If you're like me and you were a international studies major and you took one statistics course and didn't do too well your first year, that's not going to tank your application. They're more concerned about what you've been doing in your discipline. So just kind of know that that's the expectation that's usually set around GPA. Leadership experience, which can look a lot of different ways. It can be something like a position that you've held in an organization. It can be a professional role you've held in a job. It can be taking care of younger siblings and managing a household if you have parents that work full-time and maybe need some help with that. Like you can think of it in a lot of different ways. But the most important thing is what transferable skills do you have from these experiences that make you a really good leader? Again, pretty much a requirement for the international awards in particular, but cultural humility and curiosity, empathy are all going to be really important, especially if you're planning to live in Europe for 2 years, interacting not only with people in your cohort, but people in the communities in which you are studying. And of course, if anyone has studied abroad, you know that study abroad requires a little bit of resilience. There's a lot of challenge that comes with living in a new place, especially in a new cultural context. So making sure that you're demonstrating that you have that resilience and that follow through in the face of obstacles, which may come up when you are traveling abroad. Of course, we all face our challenges here domestically, but having an extra layer of like cultural unfamiliarity can make everything so much more intense. So knowing how to handle that and having realistic expectations of what that will look like for you and some strategies for how you'll address that when it comes up. And then, of course, something everyone has who is in this Zoom room today, a unique perspective on the world's biggest problems. So you all have things that you're interested in within the realm of like environmental science. There are a million different things that you can be interested in. So thinking about what your particular interest is, what your particular skill set is that you bring to this this challenge, this issue that you've identified, like those are all going to be things that are valuable, and it's all about communicating that value in your written applications and in interviews should they be part of the application process. And we are here to help you articulate all of these things in short spaces. So thinking about 500 to 1,000 words is pretty typical for fellowship essays, and we are here to help you think through all these different things, get your thoughts together, and put it all down on paper. So what are our application tips? So there is an Erasmus Mundus association, which is made up of mostly alumni, but they do have resources for prospective students as well, including representatives for each program. So someone has volunteered, an alum of the program has volunteered to serve as a point of contact, a reference, a resource for people who are interested in these different programs. And they also have country representatives. So if you're from the US, you would use the USA country representative, who just so happens to be a USC alum. So you already have a little bit of an in there when you want to ask your questions. You already have that point of contact and that familiarity with USC. So that's really exciting. There is no limit to how many programs you can apply for through Erasmus Mundus. So make sure you're finding the best fit program for you, ones that fit your goals, that prepare you for what your next steps are going to be. But if you find 2 or 3 that you're really excited about, apply to them all, see what happens. You can apply to as many as you want and are a good fit for. And then, like I mentioned before, when navigating the catalog, click on the smaller link and not the giant one to get to the program website. So I'm going to pause there and actually show you the catalog that I've been talking about so you can take a look at kind of how that works. I'll show you what links I'm talking about, and they'll give you a little bit of context before we dive into some of the tips from our Erasmus Mundus alumni. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. If you have any questions while I'm making the transition, please feel free to unmute yourself and let me know.
I have one question.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, actually, I have a few, but I'll start with one.
Sure, yeah.
If we don't receive, so I know that we can apply and that we can get accepted, but we possibly could not receive funding. So if we don't receive funding from that list of benefits that we got with the tuition, the stipend, the visa, and the travel cost, what exactly is guaranteed like in our admission, and what's just considered like, oh, you didn't qualify for that?
Yeah, so the award is the Erasmus Mundus award is that tuition, living stipend, and visa help. So that is the award that is Erasmus Mundus. If you get into the program but you don't receive the Erasmus Mundus award, sometimes like basically you would have a tuition payment for that and like housing, things like that. But there may be additional funding like from the university. A lot of them have scholarships or bursaries that you can apply for, FAFSA, and I'll show you where to find that as well. There's actually a list of international institutions that FAFSA works with, so you can potentially use like American like educational loans to help pay for some of that. And then depending on where you want to go, there may be other scholarships outside of these different locations or outside these different sources that are location specific or that relate to your area of study or some sort of demographic characteristic you run into. Like, for example, if you want to go and study in Germany, there's the DAAD study scholarship, which supports graduate degree study in Germany. So you might be able to do that instead of getting funding through Erasmus Mundus. Does that make sense?
Right, that makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah, good questions. Did you have other questions while I was pulling this up?
You already said that we could apply to more than one. Does that hurt our chances? Is there a cap on how many we could be
No.
accepted to?
Well, I mean, if you get accepted to multiple, you will have to make a decision as to which one you want to do.
Right.
But for me, that's always a good problem to have because it's better to have too many choices than to not have any.
Sure.
But I'm not the one who is making these decisions. So, with that, you would only probably be able to go to one, but you could potentially be accepted to multiple. The deadline and the timeline for turnaround on decision is pretty fast. So if they offer you an Erasmus Mundus scholarship, I don't think it's 4 days. I think that's something else, but like it's like a couple weeks turnaround. And so you may not know if you've applied, for example, to Fulbright and to Erasmus Mundus, you might not know the results of one fellowship before you have to make a decision on Erasmus Mundus. We actually had someone run into that last year, but she did accept Erasmus Mundus. So it really just depends on a lot of different personal circumstances as to what decision would be the best for you in that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So Erasmus Mundus catalog. So this is again one of the EU websites. I'll put this link in the chat so y'all can tag it for later. And so this is going to be where you'll find all of the different programs that Erasmus Mundus offers. So it will tell you a lot of information. And then see, there's almost 200 different opportunities. So like I said, the search function is a little weird. So you can start off by just kind of browsing that, but in all honesty, I would probably just go through the entire catalog when you have a few minutes and just take a look at some of these programs that you're most interested in. Okay, so let's do an example. So let's see. Okay, so I said not that the search function was weird, but we're going to try it. We're going to see what happens. So let's see. We had a lot of environmental sciences people, so I'm going to try environmental science. We're going to search and see what comes up. So as you can see here, all right. Let's see. I know we talked about here we go. I know because I worked with Nina, I know there's like coastal things, flood risk management. So let's look at the flood risk one. So when I was talking about the like links earlier in terms of what to click on, this big, really attractive looking link is not the one that's going to give you the best information. If you do click on that one, it will take you, oh, never mind, they changed it. It's better now. So disregard what I said, click on the big link. So this link will take you to the actual program page. So the program page or the page we were just on is a catalog of all the different programs. And so this is where you would click into the individual programs and see what the particular program offers, what countries they go to, what funding is available, like all sorts of stuff. So you can kind of see each one's going to be very individual depending on what you're most interested in. So for example, this one has some really good European university names here. So this one is a 2-year program that integrates science, engineering, and socioeconomic topics taught by leading experts. So the options are Dresden, Delft, University of Catalonia, and Slovenia. So they have a few different options. Usually if they have more than 3 countries, the which countries you go to is very largely dependent on what track of the program you choose. So for example, if we scroll down to this, okay. All right, and here again, they have some information on the submission. So usually the deadlines for these will be in somewhere between October and January of kind of the cycle prior to when you would start. So if you are looking to be abroad in 2025 in the fall, you would apply for the this program in the next couple of months by January 6th. And so you will note that there are two different dates that they'll give you. So one, they have non-European applicants, and then also that is the scholarship application deadline. So a lot of them will have an early scholarship application deadline, which is where it includes the possibility of Erasmus funding. They do sometimes have later deadlines, but those are for people who are self-funded and are not trying to get the Erasmus Mundus award. So as you can see, this tells you what your path is through these different universities. Everyone starts in Germany, then everyone goes to the Netherlands, and then semester 3 is where you diverge into different areas depending on whether you want to do debris flow and coastal flooding or other different modules, kind of depending on what you're most interested in. And then in the final semester, you do research and then write a thesis. So this is a pretty typical progression. And so each of these, again, will have different coursework, different requirements. So I encourage you to look at these websites in depth just to get an idea of which programs are going to be the best fit for you. So lots of environmental science ones. There are, again, quite a few public health programs. I will say the alumni that I mentioned, who is the USA representative, Jordan Hammond, she actually did the Euro Public Health Plus program. So she can give you very detailed information on that one. And she actually also is still in Europe, and she actually is doing med school in Italy right now. So if you're interested in med school internationally, and I think she said that the what she's doing there licenses her to practice in the US. So talk to her all about that. I will share her contact information at the end of the session. So for example, again, I click on medicine, it might not pull up the public health programs, kind of depends. Here's the space medicine one, which is always my favorite to look at. Skin health and care, but you can see that the search filters don't always pull things up. So it's a good idea just to go through and look at the website for yourself and take a look at those. I'm so glad they've switched the order of these two links, because it used to be the project details were at the top and the program was at the bottom, and it really made no sense. So very excited to see that change. All right, so that is going to be where you'll find the different programs that you're interested in. So back to our PowerPoint. All right. So first I'm going to share some tips from Amanda Tregdy, who did the International Master in Marine Biological Resources, also known as IMBRC. They always have these really fun little acronyms that they pick for their programs. And she is studying in France, Portugal, Sweden, and Italy. So she, I believe, is in Portugal right now, I think. Or no, maybe she's in Sweden. I don't know where she is. She's somewhere. She's somewhere cool. And she was actually in France during the Paris Olympics, which is pretty fun. So her advice is to begin the application early. So now y'all are in a really good spot. It does require a lot more effort or writing as compared to undergraduate apps. These are graduate programs. They do expect kind of that higher level of academic rigor. So definitely giving yourself enough time to do the required reflection, the required revisions is a great way to inch yourself closer to success. Make your application personable. You want to stand out. When you think about kind of who your audience is, read over the website, take a look at some of the faculty that are there, look at the university, look at the program, look at their mission, and really think about who you're talking to and how do your interests align with what the program is offering. And remember that these people who are reviewing your applications, they're reading probably 40, 50, 100 different ones. So the more you can have it sound like you and sound like only you could have written it, the more details, the more personal you make it, the more people will notice it when it lands at the top of their pile. Always a good idea to have a friend, teacher, parent, or national fellowships advisor read over it before you submit. We're happy to look at essays and offer feedback on those. Whoops. Okay. Make sure you have strong recommendations. So ask professors to meet during office hours to discuss your qualifications and reasoning for wanting to do your program. If this is a struggle for you, most are happy to help out if you ask. So making sure that you make those connections and making them early, because as we're approaching, we are rapidly coming into Thanksgiving break and winter break. And faculty do not typically work during those times. So if you are interested in pursuing this opportunity for this coming year, what I would recommend is going through the catalog, picking out a couple of maybe programs and getting in touch with recommenders like within the next week or two, because that will give them enough notice so that they can plan their schedules accordingly. You're not rushing. You'll have time to actually sit down and ask them in person or have a conversation about what you hope they'll say about you in the application before it is due. So good to start early. And again, be aware of scholarship consideration deadlines. They're going to be earlier and different from the general admission deadlines. And there's Amanda. I'm not quite sure what she's doing, but it looks impressive. Something with sand in a bucket. So scholar tips from Jordan, who is again a USC alumni and is the USA representative. She did the European Public Health Master, Europub Health Plus, Spain, the Netherlands, and France. And then she's currently in Italy doing med school. So she says to choose the one program about which you are most excited and invest the most time in that application or letter of motivation, and then use that as a template that can be adapted to the others. I know in kind of academic settings, there's this idea of like self-plagiarization, not using materials over multiple applications, I guess. But for this one, like it's okay to borrow from yourself as long as you adapt each of your applications, your essays to the particular program, because you're not going to submit the same essay and have it hit the same notes. So you want to like have some that you can use again as a template that can be adapted to different ones. She also says that you're applying just as much for your chosen city and specialty as for the program itself. So make sure when you are indicating your preferences of where you would want to be placed within these multi-country programs, preference in the way that you would be happiest. Think about this also as a way of how you can stand out among other applicants, is the order of preference for your program. Again, start early. If you need recommendation letters or language certifications, get them at the earliest you possibly can. Be aware of deadlines. This also applies to once you get accepted. Connect with students as soon as you can. Start your housing search, especially in some European countries, it can be particularly difficult to find housing. So having that on your radar, should you receive the grant, is a really good tip. And work on the administrative tasks the soonest you can to ensure you have the smoothest transition. So what are our tips for crafting a strong application? So this is the time for you to brag about yourself. I know it can be difficult to like talk about yourself and I was talking to someone today about like, oh, I feel like I'm like self-promoting. Yes, this is the time to do that, because the interviewers or not the interviewers, the application readers only know what you put on the page. So this is the time to really lay out what you are or what you do, who you are, what you care about, and why it connects to what they care about. If you're having trouble with that, it always helps to kind of think of how you would talk about yourself as if you were a friend, because you're always going to hype your friend up way more than you're going to hype yourself up. So that can be a really good tool. Or you can even ask friends and family, what are some of the things that you find most interesting or most exciting about who I am and what I'm doing? That can also be helpful. And if you come into our office, we can also talk through things with you and point out like, oh, that's a really cool thing that maybe you should consider putting in your application. Considering the overall message you want to convey and connecting it to your goals, your interests, and the program. Make sure you're using active, not passive voice, so very declarative, sort of I did this, I did that, sentences rather than saying, oh, the award for best student was given to me, as opposed to I received the award for best student. You can see how the language gets stronger. Again, we can help with that. Grammar, syntax, and punctuation all matter. So I would definitely take your writing to the writing center if you're a little bit questionable about that. We can look at some grammatical things, but our role as advisors is to really help you tell your story. So speaking of that, what's the story you want to tell? How do you want to talk about who you are? What's your superhero origin story? Because you all are looking at these really cool programs, you're all wanting to do really cool things. So what's your origin story? How have you gotten to this point? How is the Erasmus Mundus program you've chosen going to help you get to the next part of your journey? Critically think about your past, present, and future and how they all interconnect. And then, of course, be authentic. Don't just tell us what you think we want to hear. Because I don't know, ChatGPT is getting a lot of press lately, AI, all of those things. They can write essays. I definitely would be judicious about using them. But they're all just so generic. And if you kind of go and you read through a few applications, you can see it's pretty generic, like, oh, they use the same kinds of language, the same kinds of examples. So really thinking about what is unique about your experience. Did you grow up in a landlocked community and then that's what really drove you to explore the ocean, is because it was something that you didn't have when you were growing up? Or did like a personal experience with a health challenge cause you to become more interested in public health and like preventative education? Like, what are some of the things that are really unique to your experience? And then you can talk about those in your application that'll help you stand out. But of course, and we're here to help you kind of as a sounding board for this. Your application is your own, and it is something that does go out to other people. So you can feel free to share as much or as little about some of those more personal aspects as you feel comfortable. So don't feel like you have to put absolutely everything on the page. Again, it's you telling the story of how you got from there to here, including what you feel is the most relevant and the most authentic to who you are and where you want to go. To help with that, I have the Patent Pending Fellowship Fit Funnel, which is basically how you build your arguments. So why you? What is it about you, your experiences, your interests that are a good fit for this program or this project? Why were you drawn to the Erasmus Mundus Coastal Resiliency Program as opposed to one that's more on oceanic or like, I don't know, big ocean environments? You can tell I'm not an environmental scientist, but thinking about those types of things. Why did this particular program draw you in? Why is the location important? What kinds of things are you hoping to learn from the places where you're going to be living, the universities you're going to attend? Why is now a good time for you to do this? So I know we talked about, oh, I want to do a program before I go into med school. That's why now you're doing this, to help you get that public health lens before you run into medical school. And then finally, why this award? And that's where you can start to think about, what is Erasmus Mundus's goal? What are they hoping to do? And they can read their vision and mission statements, but really they're hoping to build this really collaborative, international type of community, and to be able to cross-pollinate some of the great work that's being done in the European Union with other countries from which their applicants originate. So really thinking about kind of where you tie into their mission and goals. Because again, the question they're always going to be asking is, why should we fund you? So you want to give them a good answer. All right. So we're at 6:45, so I'm going to go through these a little bit quickly, a little bit more advice from our alumni, and then we'll open it up to questions, comments, things like that. So how to craft a strong application, find your fit, look through those 192 different programs and find the ones that really make you excited. Maybe pick your top 2 or 3 to start with. Start early. So y'all are already in a good spot. Go ahead and start doing your research now so that you don't miss any important deadlines, and so that you can give your your faculty recommenders enough time to really write you a strong quality recommendation. Getting to know your faculty, that will help with that process. And also, faculty are really cool people and they're doing really cool things. So it's always good to get to know them regardless. They are looking for depth over breadth. So really thinking about where you dove deep into your interests. So if you are interested in public health, for example, are you involved with maybe a public health service fraternity? Do you do clinical hours? Do you volunteer somewhere? Are you working as a medical translator? Kind of thinking about what have you done to deepen that interest? Because it's easy to do a lot of like things surface level, but where have you really invested your time and your effort? And demonstrate those interests. So thinking about clubs you've joined, conferences you've gone to, jobs you've held, really think about how you can demonstrate all of these things that you're talking about and your interests. When you're working with us in particular, be open to feedback. So a lot of these will involve writing. I think all of them safely, I can say, will involve pretty extensive essay writing. And a lot of them are about like, they can be about personal topics. They can be about interests and values and like goals that you hold like really close to your heart that are really personal to you. And so when you're drafting up these essays, it can feel a little bit uncomfortable when someone's like, oh, well, I think you should rephrase how you talk about this goal, or, oh, I don't understand what you're saying here. So the more you can be open to receiving feedback in the spirit with which is intended, which is to be helpful and to help strengthen your application, and the more that you can really take in that information, the better you're going to be able to position your application. But of course, again, you are the ultimate author of your application and you may receive feedback that you don't agree with. So you are the person who ultimately gets to decide like, oh no, I think I want to say it this way, not that way, or to include certain things or not. But we're here to give you advice from our experience working with fellowship applications and also getting to know you a little bit more as an applicant. Using your resources, again, the Erasmus Mundus Association, you have a whole National Fellowships advising team. I'm kind of the lead for international awards, but you can meet with any of our team to get started. And of course, for essay review, things like that, you can make appointments with us as well. So what do our scholars have to say? So Amanda advises trying to connect with students in your program ahead of time. So that's where that Erasmus Mundus Association can be helpful. It helps make housing search and making friends less stressful. It's good to connect with alumni and students already in the program. Getting that information and advice from a student perspective is so useful. Again, we're going to be having the alumni panel with Amanda and Jordan in 2 weeks on the 21st. So if you can make it, that would be a really good opportunity to get some of that alumni feedback. And then finally, EMJM programs are such great opportunities to meet people from all over the world and experience new cultures. Traveling becomes so much more accessible and it's so much fun. I'm happy I chose to do this and I'm enjoying it so much so far. So, and there she is doing cool things on a boat. All right, and here we have advice from Jordan. So it's not just another study abroad. You're living in 2 to 4 other countries with other cultures and languages. The soft skills you learn, like intercultural communication, empathy, and how to view every topic from multiple perspectives are invaluable. You also have time to explore that region and surrounding areas, so take advantage of it. I caution you against sticking to your comfort zone of people. Find Erasmus and international groups, become an active part of the place's culture, and never forget that you learn just as much, if not infinitely more, outside of the classroom. And then finally, even if you don't get the scholarship, these degrees provide 2 masters, whether dual or joint, in 2 to 4 countries in 2 years, all for a more affordable price than comparable US programs. All right, so I have a couple of kind of ending questions, but let me open it up to you all first before we head into that. What questions do you have or things that you wanted to bring up to hopefully get answers? Yes.
One, I guess I wanted to ask, since this is a master's program and I know I came early and looking into this, I'm not eligible for applying for this until I graduate with my undergrad degree, correct?
So you can apply for it like in your final year of school.
Mhm.
So you don't have to already be graduated to apply, but it would be for whatever term you're thinking of entering. So this application cycle, so basically any deadline that's going to be in the next couple months, is going to probably be for a fall 2025 program start. So
Okay.
if you're looking to start in 2026, 2027, you may apply for a later cycle. If that is the case and you're not quite ready for this one yet, there are tons of other opportunities that you can apply for, and we can help with finding those. We have a whole, I don't know if you can see. Okay. Okay, can you see the website I just pulled up?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so this is our website, National Fellowships and Scholar Programs. So you can go to National Fellowships and then our fellowship database info. And so this will tell you all sorts of different opportunities. So if you're looking for things that you can do as a junior that are related to what you want to do through Erasmus Mundus, like we have so many other opportunities. So you can look at Erasmus Mundus, think about it for the future, already start looking at your programs, but there are other things like if you want to do research, if you want to study abroad, if you want to do languages, there are opportunities that you can take advantage of right now. Did that answer all your questions?
It did. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Oh, and I said that I would show you the website with the international funding. Let me grab that real quick. Well, maybe I will look it up. So if you look up FAFSA international universities, there's actually, it's a PDF, but it will come up. And these are, wait to load. So it will come up with different universities that may accept either loans from US companies, or they may help you defer any existing loans until after you complete the program. You'd want to do more research into this on the FAFSA website, but they do have quite a number of programs that you can potentially receive US financial aid for. For grad school, it tends to be mostly loans, but if that's something that you're interested in, there is that option as well. And when you go into the Erasmus Mundus program, so for example, we'll go into skin health because it's right here. Or maybe not. Never mind. We're going to space medicine. All right. So they do have, again, the funded program through Erasmus Mundus, but you can also apply for the program and self-fund. So if you look at here, they have it under apply. So they do have tuition fees. So beneficiaries of Erasmus Mundus scholarships don't have to pay them. But if you are interested in going and self-funding, again, like 5,000 euros is probably about $5,000 to $6,000 for a year of master's program. So the math might work out that you can go kind of regardless of the outcome of funding. So. All right. Other questions? Yes.
I have one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
So I saw that one of the students who are doing the program now mentioned about how we should start early with the housing search. Also, I guess the living was included in the tuition. So this is obviously different from undergrad. So I guess my question is, it's not like we're living on campus. Like there's no campus housing.
Right.
Like we're gonna be looking for like a big girl house, I guess. Like
Right.
how will the money, I guess, work out for that? Will there be like a limit, or will the school help us?
So typically with Erasmus Mundus, I believe it's, I don't want to misquote that. I think it's a it's somewhere between 2 and 4,000 euros a month. I feel like that it's not 4,000, but we will see. A living allowance, I feel like somewhere I have the amount written down. But with that, they give you a specific stipend of a few thousand euros per month, and out of that, you're expected to pay for like your food, your day-to-day living expenses, your housing, but they'll give you kind of a monthly stipend that you pay out of. Some universities may offer like limited housing for international students. A lot of them, it would be a big girl house that you'd be looking for. A lot of programs will have a list of sources, or again, that's a really good reason to connect with program alums or people in the program, because they'll probably know they've been there, done that. So they'll be able to tell you, okay, use this kind of rental service, or hey, my roommate's moving out, come live with me, sort of thing. But that would be something that would be mostly independent. Usually, especially for grad students in Europe, it is the kind of a highly independent sort of living situation where you live nearby and you commute to the university wherever you are. Yeah, good questions.
Thank you.
All right, other questions?
I did have one question about so you mentioned about I guess proving like a follow through in the face of obstacles.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
But I think this might be more of a question for when I schedule a meeting, like to work
Sure.
on my application and whatnot. But
Yeah,
I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like, what would you say would be a good way to prove that almost? Because I mean, we've all kind of like almost we've all went
yeah,
through these kind of hardships like COVID or the storm
right.
and whatnot. So I guess I was wondering, like, you have like a brief example.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to like have a proof like, oh, look, I did this specific thing and here's my receipt for my rough experience that I had. So really it's talking about like experiences you've been through and what you've learned from them. So trying to think of a good example. Um, like if for example, like for me, I had a really like tough time maybe adjusting when I was studying abroad. So like I would talk about, okay, so I went to Belgium, and when I got there, like I was really adversely affected by the weather. I just come off of a long-term relationship and wasn't doing so well emotionally. So what I did is I went and I sought out resources and I pushed myself to go out of my dorm room and to make friends and take walks and explore my environment and really engage with the space that I was in, even to kind of help with some of those challenges. And what I learned from that is the importance of building community when you're abroad. And so now whenever I go international, or even like moving, I recently, a couple years ago, moved from North Carolina to South Carolina. The first thing I did was, okay, who can I meet up with? What kinds of hobby groups can I join? How can I build that community so that I don't end up in a situation where I'm struggling and don't have anyone to lean on? Like that's how I would frame something like that. So the important thing is to take what happened and talk about the lessons learned and how it applies to whatever you would be hoping to do through Erasmus Mundus.
Right.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way, but thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, but also community, build it as soon as you can. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, other questions? All right. Well, I guess my last question was, and you didn't really have time too much to look at the Erasmus Mundus database unless you were looking at while I was talking, which is also perfectly fine. But thinking about maybe a step you'll take in the next 2 weeks to follow up on your curiosity either about Erasmus Mundus or about fellowships in general. Oh, and I should probably tell you how to schedule an appointment because that might be one of your options. So you can go ahead and throw those responses in the chat, things you might do in the next couple weeks to follow up. But how to get started in general with our office is to explore your opportunities with that info database that I mentioned. Checking out our workshops, you've already found your way here. There are a couple more coming down the pipeline for different opportunities. Check those out. If you are an undergrad currently enrolled, you can meet with us via Navigate. We're under involvement and engagement. It should say National Fellowships. I'm in the Desassure one, and there's also one that is open in Close Hip. That's for Matt, who's our graduate advisor, who can also help. But if you want me, I'm under Desassure, which that's how you pronounce that weird looking word. But Navigate under involvement engagement, or if you are a graduate student or an alumni, we do have links to Calendly for people who don't have access to Navigate. And you can find all that from the getting started portion of our website. And then finally, complete a candidate profile. So we do have our own internal database of people who are interested in fellowships. And it's really good for you to complete a candidate profile, even if you're not entirely sure what you're applying for yet, because it puts you on our radar. We usually add you to our email newsletter, which is once a week. It just kind of keeps you up to date with what is going on, what deadlines are coming up, what opportunities. And of course, put you on our radar so that we know that you're interested in fellowships and we reach out to you. So, questions, and then candidate profile. I will also drop the link in the chat if you are, if you don't have your phone handy, but this is the QR code to fill that out. Here's my contact information. I will share this PowerPoint out in a follow-up email along with the recording and some other resources after our meeting today, but there's also Jordan's contact information here and Amanda's contact information. They were kind enough to share that with us. And so for getting started, I will drop this link in the chat. This is where you can find, again, the 4 steps to getting started: options, workshops, they make an appointment link, and then also the candidate profile link. I'm gonna drop this in the chat. All right. Let's see here. There's okay. All right. Yep. So thinking about scheduling an appointment. Island and Sustainability Masters, that's a very cool one. Yeah, they have just some really cool programs. Like every time I look at the database, I find a new one I want to do personally. And speaking of that, I know we're a little bit over time, so if you have to pop out, please do. But if you graduate, like say you graduate and then you don't apply for this, you can come back and work with us as an alumni as well. We work with alums basically up until you have a tie to another university. So if you're in a graduate program or a med school, we would of course direct you to their fellowships team if they have one to work on some of these fellowships. But a lot of, like, we work with alumni all the time for Erasmus Mundus, for Fulbright. So your access to these resources doesn't stop when you walk across the stage. You can actually continue to work with us. And a lot of opportunities are open to students who have graduated, people who are in graduate school, PhD students. So we are happy to continue that relationship even after you've had your time here at USC. And then I was going to say where you can find the link to register for the Erasmus Mundus alumni panel. So if you go to advising and workshops, on our workshop page, it is here. So I'll drop this link in the chat as well. And this is going to be November 21st. It's a Thursday from 3 to 4:30 p.m. on Zoom. We will be recording that, I believe, as well, so that you can see it even if you can't attend. So do register if you want the link to that. All right. Well, I think that's all I have for you. I know we've gone a couple minutes over, so I'm happy to let y'all go, and I will stick around for questions. But hopefully this was a good session. You learned about a really cool program, and we hope that you will apply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.